Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Faria. I'm a cybersecurity consultant with Cisco Talos, and today I want to talk to you about the Cisco Secure Firewall deployment modes. So within Firepower Threat Defense, we have different deployment modes and interface modes that I want to discuss today. For the next generation firewall, we have two deployment modes. They include routed and transparent. And for the next generation IPS or IDS, we have inline, we have inline tap, and passive. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, I'm going to start with the next generation firewall, or what I like to call our layer 3. And for this, everything that we do is in routed mode is layer 3. So it kind of acts like a router where you have traffic coming in from different ports, and it's from different IP addresses or different subnets, and it's being routed to another subnet. And so if I have, an end user here that is trying to access the internet, well, there's a router, or in this case, the FTD acts like a router. So my end user would go to the FTD as a hop and then back out to the internet as another hop. So it acts as a layer 3 hop in routed mode. Okay, so next I will talk about transparent mode. In transparent mode, the hop goes past the FTD and straight to the internet. So you can kind of think about it as, everything is operating in a layer 2 switch, really. And that's what we try to depict by these dotted lines. Like, yes, there is traffic moving in different directions, but everything is really operating under a single subnet, and traffic is moving natively back and forth, and it's just as a switch would, without changing the IP addresses. Now, you do have the ability to NAT, right? And that's ultimately what we're doing. We're changing the destination IP to the we're keeping the source IP as the end user, and we are NATing here and sending it to the right destination and we're keeping the source IP what the original user was. So this is very good. We like to call this bumping the wire, the transparent mode, because this is really good for networks that don't really want too much intervention to happen. So we can still do the same amount of security as in routed mode, but it's nice that there's less intervention with transparent mode. So we can definitely see the need for that. And integrated routing and bridging, I would really categorize this. Some people categorize this as a separate, but I kind of think of this more as a subsection of transparent. And the reason for that is that in integrated routing and bridging, you can do both L3 and L2, right? So you still have that dotted line inside subnet and the DMZ. So these two act, kind of as a layer 2. And then you have your, over here would be any communication between this grouping would be a layer 3. So you can experience both switching and routing inside of the FTD, which is really cool that it has the ability to do that. So yeah, and so that kind of that's kind of what we consider firewalling, right? And we kind of, and this is why it's also on the left hand side, because we kind of read left to right, and so this has to be done or decided before we go into IPS mode. So this is kind of the fundamentals. And then once you're in routed mode or transparent mode, you really can't switch back and forth. So you kind of have to decide, what deployment you want to go with. And then after that, now we're in the IPS. And this all goes back to the the history of Cisco, where we originally created the ASAs, and the ASAs are kind of more, firewalls. And then when we acquired SourceFire, we kind of moved into IPS mode, and we kind of started implementing those into our firewalls. And so that kind of, that history of Cisco kind of also dictates how the code was written and how it operates today. Okay, so now that we are in IPS mode, so IPS is intrusion prevention, or IDS mode, intrusion detection system. This is really like our security, right? So now we're looking at 3 different modes, and inline is really our bread and butter when it comes to security, because in inline mode, this is the only mode that we're able to actually detect and prevent malicious traffic from transmitting the network. We can see that by our little stop sign there. So in inline mode, we actually have inline sets. So I don't really like the diagram as much, because it shows an inline set of ETH1, 1 and ETH1, 2, but you can also have ETH1, 3 and ETH1, 4 here, and they can be a different pairing. And the reason why we like to pair these is because ETH1, 1 and ETH1, 2, well, those are paired together. So these interfaces are kind of paired together, and there's a short memory or a sense of understanding of what kind of communication is coming in here and what kind of communication is coming in here, right? And we can kind of keep track of that communication and identify that communication as malicious or not, right? And we can look at hashes, we can look at behavior of, we can look at scripting and things of that nature. You can see how traffic moving from here to here, and the short memory of the communication between these two, we can kind of get an understanding of what that is, and then identify the traffic as malicious or not, right? And so that's why we really call this inline pairs. And we can have multiple inline pairs. So we can have, like I mentioned, these two can be an inline pair, and these two can be in the same inline pair. And then we can have another inline pair here. And so while we like to call them pairs, is obviously there's 2 interfaces, but then also multiple pairs in a group is also helpful, because now we can put the same kind of security restrictions on ETH1, 1, 1, 2, as well as ETH1, 3 and ETH1, 4, right? So now all of these can be in a group together, which now we can have similar restrictions. So for example, in that entire group, we can prevent port 22 or SSH traffic from in and out of those interfaces. So that's kind of neat. And then we have, your inline tap, which is kind of like there's a copy of the traffic is being sent within the FTD and then out. And so within this small section, we are doing our inspection, but we're still letting the traffic go uninspected to our destination. So there is a sense of we're reading the traffic real time and we're reporting on the traffic, but there is, a sense of like, connectivity that happens. So we're almost treating it real time and, delayed, if you will, because it's a little bit after the fact that it's already passed through the FTD, and we're able to, give reporting and that kind of thing. And then passive mode is when you have, let's say, the destination and a router here, and we are, passively sending a copy of all the traffic to the FTD, but the FTD is not actually in line with, the flow of traffic, right? So by sending it passively, we can still get an idea of everything that's happening, but it's strictly for reporting means. Now we also have ERSPAN mode, which is passively sending the traffic via GRE tunnel. So there's ways of that we can dash or send a copy of the traffic that doesn't necessarily have to be within the network. We can send it over the internet and still get understanding of, you know, malicious behavior that is going in and out of the network. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you were able to understand a little bit better about deployment modes in the next generation firepower, as well as the interface modes in next generation IPS of the Cisco threat defense. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.